Good morning, Will. This is Steve Rao with Pod Roku TV World Edition. We welcome you live from the All America city of Morrisville in the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, the eighth largest state in the union. And on this show and podcast, we talk about global affairs and increasingly turbulent world politically, economically, and it's the middle of the summer as we've just gotten off the July 4th celebrations. I get out your strawberries and cream. Wimbledon is being played at the All England Club. Novak Djokovic going for his eighth Wimbledon title and will then cement his place as the greatest player in the history of the men's game, although he's expected to be facing off against Carlos Alcaraz in the finals if the draws hold up. We look forward. And Venus Williams vying for another Wimbledon championship. The last time she won one was 10 years ago or more than that. And in Durham, North Carolina, there was a tragic shooting. A 4-year-old was killed. I'm having some issues getting my feeds where I normally get international news, so I'm going to turn to Mark Lee to get some of the more breaking news out there. We are going to talk a little bit about the Supreme Court cases. I've been researching affirmative action. A lot of critics are concerned that the affirmative action case is going to actually hurt the pipeline of diverse talent in our schools. They tried this in California and Michigan in their universities, and it didn't work very well. Where do we go from here? And what will happen next with the Supreme Court of the United States? Changes in the last year that have affected over half a century's worth of decisions and policy. And it's led many to wonder, why is this all happening? And does the court have too much power? President Biden also, remember, his student debt relief program was canceled. Struck down by the court. And, so we're going to go ahead and just dive right in. I did update everyone yesterday on the India trip. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the week. Let's go ahead and get started, Mark. Today's a short show for me. I'll be back for the full hour tomorrow.
Yeah, no problem at all. Like I said, one of the big stories in the news was it's hot, and it's definitely been hot, and there's no doubt about that because they have said that we set another record for heat and all in that space. I think they said that for the second day in a row, it has been some very hot weather out there and around the world. So I think it was the second day in a row that we have set this whole heat record and all in that space. So that's been a number of conversations around how hot it is out there. Of course, it's summer, so you would expect that. But yeah, for the third day in a row, Earth's average temperature broke record high. So
I'm getting used to the heat. I mean, I ran this morning about 6 miles, and you start at 8, and then by 8:30, you can really feel the heat go up, but then the muscles get real loose as long as you hydrate. But after 8 or 9, it's just purely brutal out there. I think your body gets used to it. My muscles tend to be a lot looser in the hot weather than in the wintertime when it's colder. So I'm beginning to enjoy the hot weather more. Maybe I'm just getting used to it. But it's easier to get cooler than it is warmer, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but you have to be careful that you do hydrate. I do have days where if I don't drink enough water, I can feel the dehydration, mild headaches, a little bit of fatigue. Yesterday, my eyes were burning a little bit. Went to bed and woke up fine. So, who knows?
What's your thoughts, Nick? What are you thinking about this lovely hot weather? Because, like I said,
it's a slow news day when it's got to be a slow news day when all the major media sources discuss the bloody weather. Okay. And there's some exciting stuff that's going out there. One thing is Janet Yellen and her trip to China.
Yes.
The question is whether or not we're going to have new relationships or less improved relationships with China, who feels like they're being stifled by the great United States of America because they're not able to take their position of being the world leader, which they're rightfully entitled to since they have over 1.6 billion population. The other thing I find quite interesting is the Barbie movie being banned in Vietnam. And the reason why it was banned is they showed a world map and they had little 9 dots behind Asia. And apparently that represents China wanting the South China Sea and Vietnam wanting their portion of the South China Sea. And I thought, wow, how sensitive can you be that 9 dots will get you banned from Vietnam, but only in world.
Well, there's other parts of the world that are showing their thoughts about human life and everything. Because the other thing that is out in the news is apparently down there in the Mexico area, there have been some body parts found hanging on across cities and all in that space. Because apparently the cartel's not too happy. So, there used to be a thing where you would see sneakers and other things hanging off of bridges, but now they're actually showing body parts because I guess they're trying to let folks know that they are actually still in control and all in that space. So that's going on in Mexico. Don't know that I'll be planning any trips to Mexico anytime soon because I don't know that that would be a wonderful sight to see and all along those lines.
Yeah, well, the real question is how many Europeans are planning trips to the United States? Okay, we complain about how dangerous it is in Mexico, but if you come from places like Europe where the murder rates are next to zero, and you look at the United States, you go, why would you want to visit this place? Because the United States every day, including tomorrow, even on a slow news day, you're going to see murders and mass shootings and guns out of control in the United States of America. If you guys were to travel overseas and you listened to what we listen here and you're in that country, like in Spain, if I listen, there was a murder down the street in Madrid, and then there was another murder down here, and then there was another shooting over here, you go, I'm in an unsafe country. Okay? But here's the reality. The country Spain is 10 times safer than the United States of America. In other words, your odds of getting killed by a gun is 10 times less in Spain and 3 times less in Morocco. So we live in one of the most dangerous countries in the world. So when we complain about Mexico, who are we to complain? But granted, the most dangerous countries are actually in the whole world are in our backyard. It's called Central America, El Salvador, Guatemala, Belize, all the countries down there, Haiti. I mean, you just go on and on. So we live in the most dangerous section in the world, but we kind of like ignore it. It's like, okay.
Well, speaking of Haiti, apparently a top U.S. diplomat, Anthony Blinken, is saying that we need to intervene in Haiti because there is definitely some things that are going on there. And apparently before the meeting, because there's going to be a meeting between Secretary Blinken and the Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry, and apparently some of the Caribbean leaders are changing their tone and are actually supporting outside forces coming into Haiti and maybe trying to clean up some of that area. And there's some pressure from the UN. I know there's some folks here on the network that don't think the UN does enough work or enough positive work and everything. But in this case, it looks like they might be trying to actually implement some change in a government that is not exactly the most stable at the moment and all in that space. So how are we feeling about the notion of U.S. troops going into Haiti, which is right in our backyard?
Send them in. I mean, the thing is, there was this thing called the Monroe Doctrine. And in other words, this is our house and you clean it up. And if we started cleaning up some of these Latin American countries, we wouldn't have the immigration problem because the people would go, hey, there's no reason to leave El Salvador, nice place to live. But right now, what we did, de facto, whether we liked it or not, is we allowed the gangs and to basically take over these countries. And then we worry about no Sasha in here. We worry about Ukraine because 4 people died in Lyon. Oh, that's huge. Come on. 4 people dying, and that happens every day in Latin America, every bloody day, and it's not reported. We don't give a rat. It's like we don't care about El Salvador, we don't care about Guatemala, we don't care about parts of Mexico, we don't care about Haiti, we don't care about any of the things that are in our backyard. But we're concerned about is what's happening across the pond and Ukraine. And so the thing is, if the United States wants to be the world power that they should be, You go in and you clean these countries up. In other words, and you do it. In other words, you become a strong arm. But I don't see your friend, I'm sorry, Steve, to have any muscle because he's old. And nothing wrong with you, except he's
We're going to come back to immigration in a few minutes. Let's get Jatovi's perspective. I will say that it's a very complex issue, the legal immigration, the illegal immigration. One thing that I heard Congresswoman Ross say before we get to Jatovi recently, she said that drones and technology could actually be a really good way to control illegal immigration, because a lot of times the other countries that are coming in are using drones to figure out where it's easier to come into the U.S. And so that's just a good idea where, President Trump talked about building walls. It might be technology, and I've heard Senator Tillis talk about that as well. But Jatovi, tell us what's going on in your world post July 4th.
Post July 4th, just catching up on all the news. In terms of immigration, though, yeah, I mean, immigration has been kicked down the road for so long, so there's such a backup of it. Nick, you're correct that we don't worry about particular areas, but there are so many factors that tie into that, from money to skin color and so on and so forth. It's just there's so many factors that we don't cover those issues, and it's just a sad reality. We're not. And then on top of that, if you look at, you can't throw. It's how do you justify throwing a military at a gang, for example? So how can you take the world's biggest military to attack what's considered to be a gang more so than considered to be a world power? So you're handling you're being the world police more so than being.
But if you look at it, Jatovi, look at Afghanistan. Look at the gang there, which was called the Taliban. And frankly, I believe we had a very successful venture into Afghanistan. We had very, very, in other words, Russia couldn't even handle the Afghan country. We basically took over that country and set it straight. And then we made the big mistake by abandoning it. But that, of course,
again, but
we have a very incredible military that can do a lot of good.
But think about it this way. Did we really do anything by, you said that we took over.
Yeah, we
That's
did.
not our country.
Too bad.
But
this whole thing, that's not our country. That's too bloody bad, isn't it? We're a world superpower.
But Nick, here, look at this one.
Sorry, I believe in the Roman cut.
But we can't.
Okay.
No, but we cannot.
That's not our country. Too bad.
No, but we're right now. Russia is trying to take over Ukraine,
and we're not going to let them do it.
But again, we took over Afghanistan.
That's correct. We did.
You're not listening.
Oh,
Russia,
I'm listening.
Russia's trying to attack Ukraine.
When Rome took over the Mediterranean, they didn't ask the Franks and Gaul, well, do you really want us to take you over?
Ukraine, no, Ukraine is a sovereign nation. Ukraine is its own nation. Afghanistan is its own nation. Yeah. You're saying because our ideals and our culture is superior to this culture, so therefore it's okay for us to take over another sovereign nation.
Yes.
That's incorrect.
No, it isn't. It's incorrect in your mind. No, you don't understand, Toby. It's incorrect in your brain.
No. It is. Your brain China to take.
Oh, well, we're going to let the gang lords take over Latin America, but that's your brain. My brain says no.
No.
My brain says
You're saying that
right.
A nation like China, who we consider an adversary, if they believe that they should, if they believe that it's okay for them to take over Taiwan, we should allow them.
No, we are not.
No, you're not listening.
No, I am listening.
If they believe that they have the right to take over Taiwan, as we believe that we have the right to take over Afghanistan, because we believe
in the room, baby. They have the United States of America to contend with.
You're not listening.
If we weren't around, then of course they could do that. But unfortunately, we are.
You're not listening.
I am listening.
Listen to what I'm saying. Just let me finish the whole comment.
Yeah. You're trying to be logical. I don't really give a rat shit about your logic.
So
Okay. You can take your logic. Okay, I got a trash can over here. Take your logic and throw it in the bloody trash can.
that's the problem.
Hey, Nick, hold on
I
a
don't
second.
care about your
Nick, hold on a second.
I
Let me
don't
ask
care
you a
about your
question.
rationality.
Nick,
Rationality.
No,
As Mike
Nick, hold
Tyson
on a
said,
second.
everybody's got a
Let me ask
plan
you a
and
question.
punched in
Let
the
me ask you a
face.
question, Nick, and it's based on something that Jacoby just said and
Right.
something you said at the beginning. We have an issue with gun violence. There was an incident here in Durham that sadly involved 2 kids that involved gun violence and everything. And there have been a number of gun attacks throughout this July 4th weekend throughout the country. We can talk about
31 mass
we can
shootings.
talk about Baltimore. We can talk about a number of other places. Now, by your logic, if I'm hearing you correctly, if the 1 billion plus people in China are looking at that and going like, hey, America's got a serious problem with gun violence and we need to go in there and clean that gun violence up because we can do that, then because they are a more powerful nation by your logic, then they would have the right to do that because they could come in here and clean up our gun violence by the logic that you just stated.
That is absolutely correct, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand, guys. I mean, let's go back to
as powerful as the United States of America. So too bad for them.
let's go back to basics here. The fact of the matter is that we have in the United States of America 150 times more gun deaths than Germany, 100 times more than Great Britain, and 250 times more than Japan. Now, the fact is, though, everyone always says it's a mental illness issue, and I agree with Fareed Zakaria. It's not like we have 250 times as mentally ill people in the U.S. as we do in Japan. In every one of those countries, in Britain last year, there was only 18 gun homicides. So the fact is, 4% of the world's population, we have 65% or more of the world's guns in America. And so people are getting access to these guns. They're coming in and they're just shooting, at random. And it's every day. We reach a point now where I can't even cover the number of gun shootings. I mean, Jacoby and I live in North Carolina. Mark is in Durham. Well, what's going on in Durham? And I'm going to protect the city council here and say it's not. I know the mayor is not running again. Someone today on the press, they said a negative thing about Durham not doing anything. But think about it. If the cities don't, in North Carolina, cities don't have complete control. They can't make the law. It's coming from the General Assembly. And our speaker, Tim Moore, says, well, it's a mental health issue. That's the easy way out.
The crazy part, Steve, is that the argument from a lot of those that are advocating that, we can't put in protections because it is a mental health issue, are also cutting money from mental health programs.
Yeah.
So how are you going to say that it's a mental health issue but not help out mental health programs? And then on top of that,
guys, you just got to get real. We love gun violence in the United States of America. I mean, we do everything we can possibly do to support it. Movies are about gun violence. Television is about gun violence. Video games are about gun violence. We even have a Second Amendment that protects gun violence.
What you're saying
is embrace the fact that we love gun violence in the United States.
The thing is, those guns. Mark, hold on.
Straight.
The thing that you're saying is what you missed. What Steve said. It's not that we love gun violence because every country has these video games, has these movies, has this music. I mean, Bollywood has gun.
And do they have the Second Amendment?
So what we love is guns.
Bollywood.
But Jacoby, do we have a Second Amendment in these countries? No.
Exactly. So we love guns.
If you Americans are complaining about guns, you bought and bloody paid for it. If you're complaining about violence, you bought and bloody paid for it. So enjoy it, because the thing is, that's what you want.
Nick, hold on a second. Because Nick. There's a country that we're going to admit into NATO. Hold on a second, because I'm going to bring in another fact from around the world. Because there's a country that we're going to admit into NATO. The Biden, you talked about his politics and everything, has said that he is anxiously waiting for this particular country to join it. It is not Turkey, it is actually Sweden. And one of the things that I just looked up is that gun violence in Sweden has actually increased. And, we think of Sweden as being a peaceful country and a neutral country, but apparently it has increased steadily among males 15 to 29 in the 2 decades prior to 2015. And apparently there's a whole gang culture there that I wasn't even aware of, but that started increasing in the mid 2000s and it has increased more rapidly from 2013 onward. So they've actually got a Swedish National Council for Crime Prevention, and they've been looking at the issue. So it isn't just an American issue, because apparently there have been crime gangs that have been there, and by 2021, gun violence by crime gangs in Sweden had increased tenfold since the early 1990s. So this is something that's going on not only there in Sweden, but you were comparing it to Germany and Norway and things of that nature. But this is a country that last time I checked was supposed to be fairly neutral, and they're in this whole gang situation, and that is an issue that how many of us have even heard of the Swedish gang issue being reported? Because apparently there's an issue in Sweden.
Even bringing in Sweden and their gun violence that may be increasing in comparison to the U.S., it's still.
They're not even close. They're not even close to us. Come on. If they increased, they had one person killed by a gun. Now they have 2. So they say, oh, we had 100% increase. Come on. Forget Sweden. You guys are potsers. We're the champions of gun violence. The United States of America. We embrace it, love it.
Yes, but you say to disregard it, but in 2020, they said there were 366, not 2, incidents of shootings in Sweden where 47 people were killed and 117 were wounded. And in 2021, Sweden was found to have the second highest gun homicide rate after not the U.S., but Croatia. And that's actually out of 22 European countries that were surveyed. But definitely, it does seem like they've got
a not even close.
Remember, Mark,
the United States.
I hate to say it, but that's just what happened over the weekend, this July 4th weekend.
Well,
in one city, Jacoby. Come on.
Yeah.
No, the United States, we are the country that love gun violence. We are the country that protect gun violence under the Second Amendment. We're the country that embraces gun violence. So just get over it. And frankly, it's not going to change. So the only one way, if you want to change it, you have to pick up and leave, because this is what you bought into. When
I think there is enough resolution to
you go to your.
And I want to hear what's going on in Canada and overseas, but has it spilled over? That's my question. Because if we're blaming it on the movies, if we're blaming it on video games, if we're blaming it on a number of other things, those are things that have spilled over into other countries. So we can poo-poo the idea that it is increasing in other countries like Sweden, but is part of it the fact that that culture that we have put out there on Hollywood, and to some degree some of the other places like Bollywood and Hollywood, have passed over to the rest of the world?
No, it's what Nick brought up earlier. It's the Second Amendment. It's the easy access to weapons. If you can get easy access to high-powered weapons, I mean, that's it. They say, oh, well, guns keep us safe. Well, we have the most guns per capita, so therefore we should be the safest nation. We're not.
Yeah, right.
Not even close.
This is what we bought into. So, and we love it. So the thing is, just realize that this is what you bought into. This is what we love. This is what we are. Deal with it, and then move on to an issue that maybe you can do something else with, because I don't see this changing.
Also, the present legal system in the United States also contributes to gun violence. I'll tell you why. Let's see, if you have gun,
blame the lawyers.
Your opponent, let's see, has a gun. So it's so much easier to shoot first, kill that other person with a gun, and then you'll go with a good lawyer. Okay, it was self-defense. Okay, maybe you overused it, so okay, you'll get maybe a couple of years jail, maybe much less than that. Maybe there will be no jail term at all. It will be a probation, it will be something else. So in other words, in the right situation with a good lawyer, you can just go and kill, let's see, 1 person a week if you're lazy. If you're not, you can kill 2, 3, 5 persons a week and get away with that. So at least that will justify your investment in purchasing the gun. Because if you're purchasing a gun and you're not using that, you're a loser. you lost money for nothing. So you must buy a gun and use it and kill in order not to be killed. So you kill, you have a good lawyer or maybe 2-3 on, let's see, retainer, and the life is wonderful. Actually, maybe
Sasha,
you buy.
that raises
So,
two.
in a-
Sasha,
in a roundabout way.
that raises two interesting issues. One, not everybody has access to a good lawyer, which is why the
That's a problem.
criminal justice
Well,
system
that's a
is
problem.
definitely not a fair system in all in that space, and why it is certain minority groups that are occupying the prison systems more than others, because not everybody has access to the legal kind of system that you are talking about, and all along those lines. And the other thing that I will agree with you on is if you look at the television, and I just saw it yesterday, one of the greatest commercials that is out there in terms of a PSA isn't asking us to not own guns, but it is saying that gun violence is so prevalent that you need to make your home safe. So they are making sure that you have the proper gun security, because I think that one of the commercials or PSAs that I recently saw was the amount of folks that are accidentally shot because the person in the family hasn't locked up the gun. So they want to make sure that you have the right gun protection, so that somebody like and I don't think Jacoby has a gun, but maybe he does, but that if he had one, that his son, that we also see here in this picture, would not accidentally go grab it and do something tragic in that space.
So actually, what Sasha brought up, even in talking about advocating for people with guns to go out and kill people, which I don't think he was really advocating for that, but in the statement, I saw two things that actually he brought up. Yes, the litigation. Yes, that's a huge thing. The litigation is where these the gun lobbies, the gun manufacturers, and so on and so forth. They have great lawyers that protect them. Those lawyers are called Congress. And Congress and many different governmental entities have created what's called the other part that Sasha touched on, in terms of, okay, if somebody comes into your yard, you can shoot first and ask questions later. That's the Castle Doctrine. That's exactly what the Castle Doctrine is. And South Park actually did a great piece when they were going through and doing. South Park has some great social commentary. One of the pieces that they did was the shoot first and ask questions later. You know, if they're scared of something, to shoot and kill and then say, okay, well, I wasn't really scared, or, you know, whatever scared me, I can ask questions about that later. And that's how you can justify, again, the Castle Doctrine. Okay, that's what George Zimmerman used.
That's what George Zimmerman used and everything. I hear you.
A lot of other individuals have used, especially and that's where we talk about the police brutality and how that came about. That's been used there. That, okay, I feared for my life, and I'll shoot first and then ask questions and clear things up after that. They were reaching for my gun, which they weren't. George Floyd, oh, well, he was high and he was all these things. That's the Castle Doctrine within itself, and that's gun violence and so on.
There is another danger, is that one person kills the other person, or the two. And it applies to police as well. They are becoming accustomed to killing someone, not bearing consequences, and get away with that. So these people are becoming even more dangerous than ever before, because now they have they have a positive experience of killing somebody, not taking responsibility, not serving the jail or so on. So these people are becoming extremely dangerous, because now all their life will be how to find and kill someone without bearing responsibilities. And the more people they will kill, the more dangerous they will become. And it applies to policemen as well. A policeman could get away with killing a suspect, for example. Okay, so they kill.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. We're going to hold on.
I've got
Hold on.
We'll see you on Friday. Keep talking.
Yeah, I appreciate you, but I actually was going to pivot the conversation slightly to a different direction, because we do have a special guest here as well.
Mark, hold on. Before, because Steve was bringing up a quick point. Let him get his point in as well.
Yeah, well, no, I just want to go through just a couple of issues I want you all to talk about today, and then I'm going to head out. But a couple of things. Meta is now offering a new program like Twitter. The name is Threads.
Mhm.
It's a text-based social media app. The U.S. approved a large offshore wind project yesterday. Coco Lee has died, and there's another boat tragedy in Greece, and UPS is moving closer to a strike. So those are just a couple of things I wanted to bring up. We'll be talking about those tomorrow as we wrap up the week and get into a little bit of analysis of the Supreme Court, where Mark Lee and I might bring in some constitutional experts to talk about what's going on with the High Court and what's going to happen next year. It looks like the court's making changes that are affecting all of us and for a long, long time. And affirmative action, how is UNC Chapel Hill? I think an affirmative action kind of one-on-one of what is affirmative action, this recent case, how does it affect admissions in a state like North Carolina, UNC, and more importantly, what does it mean to the pipeline of diversity in our universities? So I think it's going to really shape future of education in our country. We're going to talk about that when I'm back tomorrow and early next week. Have a great day, everyone.
Appreciate
stay
you
safe.
wanted to bring in a special guest that actually deals with the college situation and all of that
Oh,
space,
okay.
because it is Winifred Bragg, who actually has written several books and talks about the brag factor. And I'd love to hear what the brag factor is, because some people think that, you know, bragging is boasting, and she's actually using her last name and is talking about dreams without goals are nightmares, which I can definitely understand. And it definitely talks about how to create your brag book for a competitive job market, and is a motivational speaker and has done a number of other things, including creating those kind of guides that can help people in various things, including their health and everything, because she is a physician as well. So Ms. Bragg, if you would just share a little bit about the brag factor and some of the things that you have got going on. I know we put out that invitation for you to come in some time back, and I'm glad that you were able to make it and put this time to appear on the World Edition and all in that space. But I'm sure folks, including the other panelists, would like to hear more about you and what you are doing and all along those lines. And who knows, maybe you got some comments around some of the things we were talking about before we get to your conversation and everything. But definitely, Dr. Bragg, glad to have you here. And if you want to share more about what you are doing and the brag factor.
Mark, I surely do. Thank you. I listened in to your comments before, and you're right that gun violence has become really a health priority as well. It's a major problem. I really thank you for allowing me to be here. And one of the things that I can now say as a physician, when you're talking about bragging the right way, I can now say that I was on World Edition with Mark Lee. And you see how that some people may call that bragging, but it's not bragging when you really are speaking the facts. The reason I do this is because a lot of people, Mark, don't feel that they have anything good to say about themselves. And we think of bragging as a negative thing, as being obnoxious. But I just asked you, before you had your own show here, how many people stopped by any one of your guests and said, hey, can I give you a raise today? Can I promote you? Can I give you more money? Raise your hands if people do that. So people don't typically do that, not in my world and in most people's worlds. So what I learned is over time is that you have to learn how to brag on yourself. And my brag is a 5-letter word. You never need to spell it B-R-A-G again. It's B-R-A-G-G. And that second G stands for gratitude. And that means that you're going to talk about yourself somewhat from a standpoint of graciousness and gratitude. And when you do that, it's more accepting. And so I'm really teaching. I do motivational speaking, but I do coaching to entrepreneurs, to students, and I speak all around to Fortune 500 companies, teaching people how to not downplay their skills. And when you do that in the right way, it can lead to better promotions, better jobs, better salaries, better relationships. It can help you professionally and personally. And so that's what How to Create Your Brag book does. So I've created 2 books on that, one for professionals and one for college students. And we know, you all men here, but when it comes to women, if there's a job and it has 10 qualifications, do you know if a man has 1, he applies, but if a woman lacks 1, she won't apply. And so there's a big disparity in how men and women do their bragging.
Bragging, or you call it shameless self-promotion. There was a a very famous person on PBS called Susie Orman. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And she said, I'm a shameless self-promoter. Okay. In other words, she just promotes herself shamelessly. And now she's a financial guru. Her
Right.
background, she was a hairdresser. Only your
Right.
hairdresser knows for sure. But she's
right.
also a great self-promoter, or what they call a shameless self-promotion. And I think you're absolutely correct. What happens is most people do not promote or market themselves properly. There's another famous guy, Peter Thiel. Now, most people don't know who he is, but he founded PayPal, along with another guy that people are familiar with, Elon Musk. He's also a chess player, Mark. That's how I kind of know him. He's a chess master and a law graduate. But he wrote in his 0 to 1 book, Article 3, was marketing. He goes, these tech people don't know that it's not so important the product, it's how they market their product that makes a difference. And so what happens is a lot of them fail, not because they don't have the best product. They don't market as best as their product might be. And it even goes back to Apple Computer. When it first came out, there were a lot of other computer companies out there. Osborne, for example, had a computer out there. Atari there was tons of them. But Steve Jobs did something better than all of them. He marketed the Apple better than anybody. So one person I'll never forget, he flew me up to Philadelphia, Bucks County, for those who know Bucks County who listen to this. It's actually a very wealthy area. And I stayed in his 40,000 square foot home after he picked me up in his chauffeured limousine. His guest house, I didn't stay in. It was only 4,000 square feet. And so I'm with Manny. I go, so Manny, what's your secret of being so successful? Back then he was making about $3 million a year, which is pretty good in the 1990s. He goes, Nick, it comes down to one little thing. He who markets best wins. And this guy wasn't the brightest star in the sky. Most of the people that I've seen that are very successful have a high school education. So sorry that all the people that had to go through education traditionally, but the most successful I ran into either dropped out of college or had a high school education.
Well, that raises a good question. Mr. Bragg, one of your books is about getting into college and how they need to learn to own and communicate their value, which I definitely agree with. But we've also seen a number of conversations in the college space around affirmative action and around a number of other things. So how relevant is it to have a book about being a college student in this era when there are so many jobs that are not necessarily college related, or are these principles that people can use even if they aren't necessarily going to college? Maybe they're going to advance in the technology fields, and we do know that some of those fields are not necessarily needed to be college oriented in this modern day time and everything. So are these principles that folks can use even if they want to get a higher education but don't necessarily want to go to college?
I have a part of the book that talks about if you don't have a degree for that very reason, because to your point, Nick, you are right. Most of the multimillionaires we know, if we look at Bill Gates and some of the other people, they didn't finish college and they were college dropouts. But I still say for the most part, those are the minority of the people but they all happen to be the billionaires that we look at. But I just tell people, college for a lot of people is just a ticket to get them from point A to point B. But be that as it says, you can use the principles that the Bragg Factor teaches, whether you go to college or not, because it's all about owning your values and your skills. And you really turn yourself, for people who can't brag on themselves, turn yourself into a product if that's a problem for you, and talk about the good and the value of that product. And what you really wanted to do, marketing companies spend billions of dollars making people say, that is my Pepsi, my car. That word "my" is what really takes you from A to B. So when I was trying to build my practice years ago, and I knew nothing about marketing and self-promoting, because medical school didn't teach me that, but I knew I had $100,000 of loans that I had to pay them back. And so I would go to networking things and say, "Hi, I'm Dr. Bragg. Nice to meet you." And people would seemingly look at me and say, "So?" And I would come home with no referrals. So I had to learn, how do I get to stand out so that people would know me from other doctors in the room? And that's how I kind of created the Bragg Factor. and learn how to do effective marketing and talk about myself in a different way that people would choose me. And so I learned that these principles can work whether or not you go to college, Mark, or not. You can use them because it's about showing your value and what your skills are. And so that people can say that you are my plumber, you are my car dealer, you are mine. And that my is what makes the difference, because then people are buying into you. So my goal with my patients, I don't want them to say, I saw the doctor today. I want them to say, I saw my doctor. And when they say that, when they see me at Costco, they're introducing me to their husband, their daughter, and then they become my patient. So you can use that whether you're computer sales or whatever you're doing. You want to say it in a way that you want to solve problems. And what Brag Factor is about, you talking to the people to find out what is it that their problems are that you can solve. And that's what we want to do, whether you go to college or not. Those are good skills that we need to know in order to make it in this world and to be effective and have a good job.
Well, you mentioned something that I know Nick mentions on a regular basis. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it, but I'm not going to put words into his mouth totally. But one of the things he talks about regularly on this network is this notion of fiscal literacy and the fact that too many of us aren't taught those principles. And you kind of alluded to it, Dr. Bragg, even when you go to medical school. So you didn't have the business aspect of the medical school after you got out. And as you just stated, and I've heard other doctors and lawyers stated as well, there was a tremendous amount of debt after you got out of school as well. So is that something that you wish you had been taught when you were in medical school or even in undergraduate school, the notion of fiscal literacy and the notion of what it meant to run the business of a medical practice?
I wish I had. Fortunately, my father worked for, I hope it doesn't turn you off, for Internal Revenue for 33 years. And so as a young child, in order to get my allowance back in the day, I had to sit across the table from him as he gave me my allowance. And I always tell people I was the only person in the first grade that knew how to do itemized deductions, because my father would make me tell how I spent my money and how did I possibly want any other money. So that taught me a little bit on financial literacy. But to your point, running the business, yes, we needed that in medical school. We needed marketing, because at the end of the day, regardless of what you're trying to be, doctor, lawyer, salesman, plumber, as you say, a technical field, you need to be able to sell yourself, and you need to have financial literacy. Otherwise, debt becomes a slave. You become a slave to debt. And with $100,000 in medical school debt with interest, that is a lot of money for a young person. And now it's up to double, about $200,000 people pay for a medical school education. So we need that training in undergrad as early as you can get it. And I think that Brag Factor needs to be taught to people from high school, college, or whatever area, so that you need that early on, because financial literacy, oh my God, it's the number one thing that you need to make it from point A to point B. Because we look at our athletes, how much money do they make? And yet at the end, how many of them end up bankrupt? Because you need to understand your own money. As I read something about Oprah, I believe, and I don't want to misquote her, but I believe she says that she likes to check her own checkbook. And this is a woman with a lot of money. And so you need to check your own checkbook. And if Oprah's checking hers, I know the rest of us need to check ours.
No doubt about that. One of the things I was curious about that you said, and then I definitely want to hear from the other panelists as well, is you said your dad was a IRS person and everything. So I'm imagining that growing up, that was not exactly something that you were bragging about in your school and everything, because that is a job that is seen as being a notorious job. So I'm thinking that might have been something that you didn't exactly run to your friends and be like, hey, Dad's an IRS agent. He's going to be coming after your folks and all in that space and all in that line. So was that a job that you actually boasted about when you were a youngster?
Well, back in the day, you had to write down where your parents worked. And every year the teachers go, oh my God, your daddy works for IRS. And I would sit shame in the class and didn't want the teachers to say that. And I would go to tell my dad, Dad, here we go again. A teacher's mad at me and just met me because you work at Internal Revenue. He said, well, tell her if she pays her taxes, she'll never meet me. If she does what she's supposed to do, she'll never meet me. But I didn't boast about it. You're right. I did not boast about it. But he said it's just about accountability. And if you do what you're supposed to do, you'll never meet him. And so it taught me early things about being accountable with my finances.
Makes sense. Jatovi, Nick, definitely, even Sasha, I think I see him leading Newton Rosen. He's actually a CPA, so he might pop on if he's available and all in that space. But definitely any questions that you have for Dr. Bragg and all along those lines. I did see, as y'all are thinking of the questions, that one of her first books was called Dream Without Goals Are Nightmares. And I do know that there are a lot of folks that are walking around without their dreams and don't even have set goals and all along those lines. So Dr. Bragg might want to talk about that as well. But definitely any questions that you find folks have.
Yeah, well, one thing she's right about is that and this goes back to the college curriculum. When I first started my law practice back in 1984, there was no courses I ever took in law school or in my MBA classes that showed how do you start your own company and how do you manage your own corporation. None. In other words, it's not like, oh, I didn't take the class, or I missed that class, or I showed up but I wasn't present, which a lot of students do. They show up but they're not present. Everybody thinks that.
Right.
But it just wasn't even available. So when I graduated from law school in 1984, actually, when I bought a book because I wanted to start my own law practice, was How to Start Your Own Law Practice Without Skipping a Meal, was the name of the book, because it was so hard to transition right after graduation and then start into your practice. And part of the reason why back in 84, unemployment was over 10%. Top job I could get was $8.50 an hour. My teaching job I had at University of Denver paid me a whopping $5.50 an hour. I'll never forget that. And I said, this isn't working for me. First week I was in practice, I made $3,650 in my own practice. That was money to wow. And you know what? That was in 1984. I have been unemployed ever since, otherwise known as self-employed now for, I don't know, 40 years owning my own companies. But here's the funny thing. Of all those crazy courses I took at MBA school, law school, and my master's in tax, none of them, not one, was even offered on how to start your own corporation. Even if it was skipping a meal or anything like that. They just don't. So it doesn't surprise me that in medical school you missed the class, Dr. Bragg, because it's not that you missed the class, it's not even offered.
It's not even offered.
Right.
Right. It's not even offered. And it's just so important. And then there are some doctors who say, well, I don't want to discuss anything about business and money. I want to just be a doctor. But being a doctor is about business and money. You have to understand that in order to effectively treat your patients and to keep your lights on. And I think that's what is going with healthcare now. Some of the people who are managing really don't understand business and money, because I think we could do a much better job if we understood those things. And even with the brag factor, one of the things I teach people is, you call it elevator pitch. I teach people about how to have a 30-second brag. So Nick, when they're networking and trying to get clients in their law firm and as an accountant, what do you say about yourself in 30 seconds that people can hold on to and remember? Why would they want Nick as opposed to someone else? I gather now you're a lawyer with an accounting degree. So that's a plus. So hopefully that knocks out 2 bills. Is that correct, Nick? Or do you still get just a double whopper with you?
It's close to that. I do retirement plans. Okay, that's where it goes, National Pension Partners. I actually set up retirement plans all over the United States through the internet. And I've been doing that for 22 years. I started the company 22 years ago, and right now it's headquartered in Salt Lake. They do a lot of the work in that particular area. But it's been a very interesting experience. But I had prior lives before that where I was an estate planning attorney for 17 years prior to that. So it depends on the Internal Revenue Code. My business goes where the code goes. Speaking about IRS, goes where the code goes. When they eliminated the estate tax back in 2000, basically eliminated my position as an estate tax attorney. Then I switched over to pensions, which is an income tax tool, and I've been in pensions because they have not eliminated the income tax yet. I don't think they're going to, so it's been a pretty...
How you're wrapped, how your value is different than just attorney. You have that accounting and the IRS background. Right. And so the person gets you, I'm saying they get a Whopper combo. You come with the cheese, the Whopper, and all of it wrapped in one person. So your 30-second brag attracts me to you because I'm thinking, here I have an attorney, he knows accounting, he knows taxes, he has all of that, rather than having to go to 5 different people. And so I teach people that
Well, I
was
was going to bring in the fact that we have another gentleman that has joined, Lee Newton Rhodes, who is actually a CPA, but also a presidential candidate as well. So Lee Newton Rhodes is doing a number of things in that space and all along those lines. So Lee, if you can chime in, we've got Miss Bragg, who has written a book called The Bragg Factor and is a physician and whose dad, ironically, was in the IRS back in the day, and I don't know if he still works for the IRS or he even still around and everything, but definitely was in that space growing up and all along those lines. So Lee, I know you definitely know about a lot of this kind of things, including boasting as a CPA. So any thoughts, or have you been listening, any shares that you want to bring?
I just joined now at the end of the podcast, pretty much. Welcome to the podcast. It's nice to meet you. And let me just listen to what y'all are talking about.
Fair enough.
Yeah, well, it's a way to get rid of people. If you're ever at a cocktail party, you just say, "Hi, I'm Nick. What do you do?" "Oh, I work for the IRS," and they all leave. Okay, so
I'm from the government. I'm here to help y'all.
I'm from the government. I'm here to help you. So it's a good way to get rid of them. But you went become a physician, and see, then you don't want to tell them what you do because then it attracts people. "Oh, I got this sore arm. What should I do with it? I got this headache. How can you?" They're always bothering you with questions.
Dr. Bragg, we had talked earlier, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it, and you kind of alluded to it, but what are your thoughts about how we are handling, even as a government and as a world, but particularly here in the U.S., medical care? Because like I said, you are a doctor, and I sometimes am frustrated by what is going on in our medical efforts, even though there are all kinds of conversations about doing things with cancer research and a number of other researches we just supposedly have gotten out of this pandemic, even though some folks are still concerned that it still exists and it's still a issue to be dealt with and all in that space. But how are you feeling we are doing in healthcare in general here in the United States?
I think there's a lot of disparity in healthcare in the United States. And when you talking about yourself, I try to educate my patients on what is their 30 seconds. When they go to the doctor, depending upon if you're not in a private practice, you work for a group, they're designating how limited time that the doctor can spend with each patient.
Right.
And so if you have a lot going on, how can especially an elderly person or a person that has multiple problems, be able to say to a doctor in just a few minutes, "I have all these things going on," and the doctor get a good handle on it, diagnosis, and get a treatment plan? I think that is unfortunate the way we're doing that. And that's why I believe they say now medical errors has become the fourth leading cause of death in America, and because of mistakes. And I think that it can happen because they're understaffed and the time is so short that we're allowing doctors to be able to treat patients. Just last week, I had someone who had a hand injury who shared a story with me, went to the ER twice, was sent home, had to see 5 doctors before they finally got to the right one because the patient was insistent that they had something wrong with their hand and had to have emergency surgery and was turned away from the ER, had insurance and everything because they're moving so fast, they didn't get to the core of the problem and didn't refer them to the right people. And so I think we're not doing a good thing. And I think that patients have to we talk about everyone wants to be a business owner, but we have to be the CEO of our own health if we are going to get good health in America now. And so what I want to do also with the Bragg Factor is teach patients. I try to teach my patients how to do their 30-second brag. How do you captivate or say to the doctor in 30 seconds, "What's wrong with me?" so that they get the real nuts and bolts of what's going on with you as they have to do this fast triage so that something is not missed. And so there needs to be some way that we're educating people really how to go to the doctor so that they get a better outcome. And I think we're just not doing a good thing with that. There's so many disparities with minorities, elderly, and women in healthcare. I'm a pain management doctor, and there are 3 groups of people that we know that won't get good pain management, and they are minorities, women, and elderly, because people think that they are going to abuse medications, and yet they don't really are the ones that are abusing it, but that's the ones that people have put a stigma on for abusing medications. And so pain management is not done appropriately in this country, and people think it's all about opioids. It's not. It's about working up people. How many people do I see that were on opioids or had surgery, but never had the workup that they needed to know that maybe surgery wasn't the answer? Because
Yeah.
surgery, back surgery in the United States is done twice the rate in other countries. So, Mark, I think we could have a conversation, a long conversation about healthcare, but I think that our leaders, and I often say, if we could have the insurance they have, we wouldn't have a problem.
Makes a
But
lot of
we
sense.
talk about what's the deficit and what's the economics. Yet, how many of us get a job, and when we leave a job, we lose our insurance? Our leaders get a job whether they stay there a minimum amount of time, and they get insurance forever. And yet, look what the disparity is between the leadership and the people. And I know we'll never resolve that because they have to change the law, but they need to make that closer, and so that we can get better health care that the people can get.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Jacoby, any thoughts about what she's been talking about and just any questions in general? So I'll turn it over to you, Jacoby. You oftentimes have some insightful thoughts and questions as well.
No, I mean, I don't. I mean, you guys were having a great discussion around business and actually the IRS and government involvement, and so on and so forth. And I mean, what you had just said, especially at the end, about the healthcare disparities and ways to improve those healthcare disparities. Because yes, I'm a big. I'm right along with you in that. With the whole problem with a lot of the healthcare disparities is the fact, the affordability, the fast food restaurant style that we've gone to because it's big business now, and we've gone away. We're still focused on treating the symptoms and not the problem. So it's all just money management business style now. So yeah, it'd be great if we did have that single payer or that same insurance that government individual had, and we're all up under that same plan, because I think that would help.
Okay.
Similar to how other countries in the world do it, that would help out our healthcare disparities.
Yeah, no doubt about that and everything. One of the things that you also have written about, Dr. Bragg, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. I know I'm not exactly doing the best job of it right now and everything, because the posture is not the best at the moment and everything. But what are some of those secrets to maintaining a healthy back? Because I know that is one of your other books, is Knockout Pain: Secrets to Maintaining a Healthy Back. And I know that I probably got to do better with exercise. I mean, this is a comfortable chair, but I still sometimes do the slouch over and do other things that are probably not the best for my back and everything. But what are some of those things that should be done to maintain a healthy back so that you don't have to have those back surgeries and those pain medications to alleviate the back pain should they exist and everything? So far, I've been fortunate that I haven't dealt with that, but I have family members and friends that have. So what are some of those secrets to maintaining a healthy back?
Yeah, what we know is about 80% of us will have back pain by age 55. So when you have back pain, you are not alone. And back pain is not found what people think in blue collar workers. It's white collar workers equally found. And so some of those healthy things that I tell people from chapter 1 in my book that people ignore it, and that's how I pay for my house and my car, because they ignored this one simple fact: sitting, which all of you have been doing here the last hour. If you're sitting more than an hour, half, or 2 hours, get up, because that prolonged sitting is going to increase your risk of having back pain. So if you have a job where you're driving, there are rest stops there for a reason. So get out at the rest stop and do some stretches. And if you do have back pain, know that the answer to it is not just running to have surgery, because even if you have surgery, at the end of the day, you're going to have to do the same exercises or some form of physical therapy that you hated before you had surgery. And so you want to try not to have surgery, and you want to just make sure that you do things to increase your core. And that's your back muscles and your stomach muscles, to make it as strong as you can. And what I say, simple thing, you can go to any store and buy one of those stability balls. You've seen the big balls you sit on, and you can sit on at a time when you're doing your show, Mark. I can't tell it. And when you sit on that, just balancing that is going to help to increase your core. And just sitting on that would be a tremendous thing to help people increase their core and prevent back pain. Another simple thing is I have a YouTube channel called how to have a pain-free Friday. It's called Dr. Winifred Bragg, and it's tips for a pain-free Friday. And every Friday I do YouTube tips on how to prevent back pain and other pains you have. A simple thing is like Jacoby has his son there. He's a big child now, but when you lift something, never lift something with your arms outreached. Bring it close. So if you're lifting up a baby, make sure your arms are close when you lift up anything. You're lifting up a box. Never do it with your arms outreached. Bring them close. And in my book, I even have a chapter on exercises you can do while you're watching television. Simple thing, if you're watching the Super Bowl or whatever game you're watching, baseball, basketball, put your snacks in the kitchen, and that will force you to get up from that couch. And your team may be losing and you're just stuck in that couch. By the time that game is over, you have back pain. Put your snacks in the kitchen, so at least you have to walk to the kitchen to get your snacks, and that motivates you from not doing that prolonged sitting. So that tells you some simple things, but you can get a lot of that information from YouTube, Dr. Winifred Bragg, tips for a pain-free Friday.
Well, I appreciate that and everything. You could just talk really quickly, and then we can go a few minutes over, but we'll get ready to wrap up very shortly and everything. Do you think that too many people set these dreams and they don't really have a concrete goal, and that is why there are a lot of people that are kind of going through the motions and they aren't necessarily having a plan in motion? Because I do know that is book one in your series, Dream Without Goals Are Nightmares, and I feel like a lot of people are going through that nightmare kind of existence. But I'd just love to hear your thoughts about that, because I think there's a lot of people that don't have a plan in action.
Yeah, so what I tell people, there are 4 simple questions with a goal we need to ask. But first, we need to get clear on what is it we really want. Not what somebody else wants, but what is it you really want? And that's your why. Because if you get convicted on your why, what I found out is you will find out your how. So what is it you really want? But then we've got to, Mark, put a time frame to it. Otherwise, if you want to save for a house or lose weight or get a new job, you've got to put a deadline to it. Because when you put a deadline on the time frame, that propels you to move toward that goal. And that's why we need to write them down. When we write things down, we know that puts some concreteness to it, and it makes it more real rather than just a hope. Because a dream without a goal is a nightmare. And so a goal needs to be written down. And we know from research that people who write their goals down accomplish them more. And the third thing is, you got to say what's holding you back. And that's where the work is done. If it's a house you want, you got to say, well, what's holding me back? What habit do I have, or what can I do that I eliminate? You talked about the fast food restaurants, Jacoby. You say, well, maybe I can stop going to the fast food restaurant, save that $11.92 for that Whopper combo and put it aside, save that money and put it toward whatever the goal is you're saving money for. But you've got to be able to say, what's holding me back? And then, Mark, you've got to have your strategy. But what people don't realize, and oftentimes, is you don't have to do it by yourself. You have to find out who else has done what you want and ask for someone to help you. And that's where we sometimes fall down with our goals, because we think it has to be only on us and that we don't ask for any help. And asking for help helps a lot. My books became bestsellers because I didn't know anything about writing a book. Again, medical school didn't teach me that. So I sought out people who had written best-selling books, and people are happy to help you, but you have to be willing to ask. And so then you ask for help. That helps you, I think, to reach your goals and to find a mentor. Finding a mentor is just so important regardless of what you want to do. If you can find someone who's done it, but you want to use that person's time wisely. Nobody wants to counsel you when you haven't done the work, when they tell you tips that you could do and gold nuggets you need to follow through. And having a mentor can help you tremendously. That has helped me so much in my life, having people that gave me guidance along the way. You see, what people look at you and everybody on this panel as a finished product. And they say, well, how did they accomplish that? How did he become a producer? They see you as a finished product. They didn't see you when you were in the trenches. They didn't see you when Nick was making $0 per hour, when I had a work-study job, $5 per hour. They didn't see us then. They see us now with the lipstick on, with the beard all in place, in the car. They didn't see us before. And that's what they need to realize, is that they have to have a goal, find someone to help them. And just like we accomplished, they can, but it's work. There's work. You have to put in sweat equity before you have some rewards.
And one of the things I wonder about sometimes, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it because you kind of alluded to it, is do you think that we sometimes slip into the habit of trying to live other people's dreams? Because that is something that I have run across in my own life, and I know others that have done it as well. So sometimes you are so excited about the company vision or the vision of others that you are living their dreams and not necessarily your own dreams. So I was wondering your thoughts about that, because I have seen that as something that even happens in corporate America. I'm around the corner from GlaxoSmithKline and a couple of other companies, and I know there are a number of people that are probably more concerned about the corporate dream than they are their own dreams and ambitions. But I was wondering your thoughts about that and how you deal with that.
That happens a whole lot. And that's when you fall down, because then you're not your conviction. You're not into the why. You're living for someone else. And they say that sometimes social media, people look at where someone else is doing this and how they are doing that. And then they don't realize that you need to live your dream. And when you get convicted on your dream and not living someone else's dream, then you can work harder on it. And you're right, that happens so often now that we look at other people and try to compare, and then you end up not being happy, and you realize that you wasted so much time on what I say, the treadmill of life, just on a treadmill going nowhere because you were trying to live somebody else's dream other than your own.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Lee Newton Rhodes, as we're going to wind down, and I will ask Dr. Bragg if she can give her contact information and how folks can get that powerful book of hers and everything. But Lee Newton Rhodes and Jatovi, you've been listening now for a while, so if y'all have any last second questions or anything that you want to share, then we'll get ready to get out of here.
I just have one comment. I think the doctor touched on it for a few things. One is, it's sad that for most people, their health insurance is tied to their job, so they can't leave jobs because of the health insurance. That's one. Two is in terms of the holistic prevention. What can we do? Diet, exercise, not to get into a position where we need surgery or we need medication. The doctor touched on that. Thank you very much. Just one quick question, if you may. It's a little political, maybe not. During the pandemic, I think one of my take on that is doctors were told that he couldn't treat patients individually because the medications are off-label, what have you. They were told this is how you're supposed to treat patients, period. Do you want to comment on that or not?
They were told that this is how you treat patients, period. You mean with the COVID or with what?
During COVID, right. If the doctor felt a medication is appropriate, whether it's ivermectin or what have you, sorry, you can't do that, even though doctors thought maybe that'd be appropriate. Or this patient doesn't need a vaccine because for whatever reason, sorry, you need to get the vaccine.
Well, now I will just tell you, I believe in the vaccine because I have seen people not have the vaccine and had great morbidities.
Agreed.
Right. And so I believe in having the vaccine, and that doctors should encourage people, especially people with certain risk, to have had the vaccine. Now, certain doctors work for certain companies, and certain companies, if you're with a group practice or a certain big organization, they are able to dictate more of what a doctor can do in terms of their care. I have my own practice, and so my own practice, I'm at free will to spend the time that I want to spend with the patients. And I think what people don't understand is not so much the test that the doctor orders, it's the time you spend with them so that you get the right tests. You can come to a doctor and get a bunch of tests, but if he didn't or she did not understand what your problem was, Lee, guess what? You ended up with the wrong tests. And so that's why it's important before you go to the doctor, you think through, what is it that you want the doctor to understand? Ask someone in your home, did you understand what I was trying to say? And if they didn't understand, let me tell you something, with all the doctor education, whatever, they're not going to understand you either. If you I had a lady came to me emergently to see me about her back pain. Guess when it started? 1969. So she was rushing in there for a Friday evening appointment to see me, and the pain started in 1969. You see what I'm saying? People need to get a sense of what's the emergency, what's urgent, and be able to explain to people what's going on. And you say it to your loved one, and you say it to someone who, they don't have to be medically trained. Did you understand what I'm trying to say, what happened to me? And if they can follow your story in about 30 seconds or a minute, a doctor can. Now, there was a study that came out in 2018, that the average doctor only waited 11 seconds before they jumped in and interrupted before the patient was able to speak. So you need to have your story together for those 11 seconds. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what they said, that we gave people 11 seconds before we jumped in to speak. So that speaks to when you go to the doctor.
That's not restricted to doctors. We do that in life, unfortunately, too.
In life. And so we need to have everyone, no matter where you're going to your accountant, your lawyer, whatever, you need to know what you want to say when you get there and make your 11 seconds powerful. You're right. We're just a fast-paced country now. And so I think that you're right about the healthcare being tied to the job and you can't take it anywhere else. We need to look at some of the things that we're doing here in America. Other countries have better models, and that we need to look at and see, can we eliminate some of these disparities? Because as long as we're having it, we're not moving the health forward. And to your point, in other parts of our medical area, if I said to you first thing with your heart, you need to have a heart transplant, you're like, no, let me try to lose weight. Let me take medicine. Can I do anything? But for some reason, when it comes to orthopedic problems like back pain, people come asking for surgery, and you should do the same thing. You should want to try conservative measures before, because how many people you know who've had back surgery, who had to have 2 back surgeries, who maybe have had to have 3. So you don't want to get in that cycle of just being cut on. You want to do, to your point, Lee, you want to do something holistic. You want to do something conservative with no matter what you're having before you have back surgery, unless you have 4 things: loss of control of your bowel or bladder, weakness, or incapacitating pain that can't be relieved by any other means. But you want to make sure that if you don't have those things, any progressive neurologic deficit, weakness, or loss of control of your bowel or bladder, then ask the doctor, what can we do conservative? Let me try these things first to see, because we know that about 80-90% of the back pain is going to get better if we do the right conservative measures. And the other thing I want to leave with people is that people think that all physical therapy is created equal. Physical therapists have different trainings, just like other physicians do. And so you want to make sure that you have a therapist that's trained in your type of back pain. Well, how do you know that? It's difficult to know, but you want to make sure your therapist is touching you, not just putting you on a bike, putting you on a treadmill. Did they touch you during that encounter? And that's a good key to know if you have the right therapist for you for a back problem.
No doubt about that. And one of the things that you alluded to that I think is important is something that happened with my own mom sometime back when she was having some medical issues, that you got to be your own advocate, because there was something going on. I can't remember what it was, but I think it was a dietary thing. And she actually advocated and talked to the nurses and the doctors about why they didn't need to do what they were doing. And I don't know that enough people do that and are their own advocates in that sense. So you have to be your own advocate. But mom is a business person, having worked in nonprofits for a number of years and worked in media. So she wasn't going to take things lightly, and she doesn't take things lightly even to this day, as she is still around, and knock on wood, is in very good health and all in that space. But definitely, I do think you've got to be your own patient advocate and all along those lines. And I'm glad you brought up the notion of heart surgery, because that can be something that we do a lot of research on before you have that heart. Because actually, my brother's significant other just recently had a new heart implanted in her and everything, and is doing quite well in that recovery process. I think it's been almost a year since she last had that new heart.
I can't speak enough about being your own advocate. And if you are sick, take an advocate with you, someone that can speak for you, because you got to see, they're seeing a lot of people not making excuses for anyone, but they're seeing a lot of people, someone that knows your history, that can articulate what your wishes are, and to help you with the follow through, and so that you can be your own advocate. So kudos to your mother for being able to speak for herself, and that's going to lead those who speak can get better care. So you have to be your own advocate and ask for what you want, but you've got to be able to bring information. You can't come like some people tell me, I heard all over. I had x-rays where? I don't know. Well, no one's going to know where your x-rays are when you say you don't know. People think they come to the doctor and I can just pull them out the sky. You put your name in, I can't do that. So you need to come with information when you come to the doctor. In my book on back pain, Knockout Pain, Secrets to Maintain a Healthy Back, I have a log in the back that teaches you, in a whole chapter devoted to how do you enhance your communication with your doctor, and teaches you information of what doctors you have. And there's some charts there. And you can get any of my books. They're available on Amazon. And you can always email me at drbragg@thebraggfactor.com. And my website is thebraggfactor.com, and that'll teach you how to get to me. I don't want to give too many information things, how to reach me. You get lost. It's thebraggfactor.com, and all of my books are on Amazon. And on my website, it'll give my email if you need to contact me.
Well, I greatly appreciate the conversation. I don't know if Jatovie or Lee have any final thoughts. Otherwise, we'll get ready to get out of here. But definitely, I have enjoyed our conversation, both about the gun violence earlier and now about the health aspect with you, Dr. Bragg, and everything. And I think we've got another guest on tomorrow, and definitely looking forward to another great World Edition. But Lee or Jatovie, if you have any final thoughts, otherwise, we'll get ready to get on out of here. And Dr. Bragg, glad that you were able to come on. And anytime that you want to come on and share other medical advice, do know that you are always welcome for a return trip as well.
Well, I surely would, because the conversation has been very stimulating, and I'd be happy to come back again and talk with you all, because I love listening to your perspective and the things that you have brought forward today, and I appreciate your invitation.
No problem. Lee, any last thoughts, or Jatovie?
No, you just make me feel bad. I didn't come on earlier in the show because the topic and the doctor is so interesting.
Well, we have to come back again, Mark, and make sure that Lee is at the top of the show.
We'll make sure that we do that next time as well. So we're going to get on out of here. I see that Jatovie's got his parent duties going on and other things. So we're going to get on out of here. But it's been a enriching conversation, and hopefully we'll see Jatovie back along with his son, and along with Lee Newton Rhodes and Nick and the rest of the gang. And hopefully we'll have Dr. Bragg back on in the near future as well. So glad to have you here, and definitely if you want to give your contact information just one more time so that folks can catch it before I bring out the symbol that gets us in and out of this show, definitely do that right now, Dr. Bragg.
Contact me at my website, thebraggfactor.com, and you can get any of my books at amazon.com. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. And we're going to get on out of here. It's been another great show, and we'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. We've got other shows, including Barbara H. Smith coming with her Empowering You show at noon. And then we've got a show around investments coming at 1 o'clock with Peter Bennett. So those are coming very shortly. And we've got other shows that'll be coming on, including Coco McMillan, who's got some musicians as she comes out of the musical world. And that'll be at 6 o'clock this afternoon. And she was a former background vocalist for Gerald Levert and has worked for a number of other great artists as well. But let's get on out of here, and we'll stay tuned here on podtv.tv as well as Pod TV on Roku for the various other programming that'll be coming your way on this particular day, Thursday, the 5th it is, and all in that space. So let's get on out of here.